Hi everyone, my name is Selina and I am a motion designer and editor at Dentsu Creative, Edinburgh. Today we'll have a look into Spline, which is an online 3D design tool that can help you create interactive experiences without any prior knowledge in the area or experience with 3D software. First, you need to create an account which is free. You have the option to continue with your Google account or you can sign up with your email. You'll receive a verification code on your email that you need to enter here in order to continue. Then there will be a few very simple questions oriented around who you are and how you intend to use Spline. I will fast forward this section. This is the main dashboard. You can see you're on your files page where all open projects from the library or custom created ones are automatically saved, and you also have access to the library with all templates that you can use. Now we can start exploring the interface. For this purpose I will open one of the templates and we'll have a look at what's in there and how it's organized. After that we'll move on to creating our own scene. Once you click on a project, it will load and then will be automatically saved to your files. On the left hand side you can see all your layers and groups of layers. You can see this little eye symbol which can hide and show objects, and also the arrow. By clicking this arrow you can expand that group and see all the layers in it and further manipulate each individual layer. Here I will stop for a second and I will put on screen the shortcuts that we'll be using the most today. Now let's have a look what's on the right hand side. On the right we have all our properties and interactive settings. In terms of interactivity, if you select an object, you see on the right we have different settings. Base state is the current state of your object, and then the state is the new one where your changes will be applied. Basically, how the object will behave, interact. For example, changing scale, color, rotation, etc. Then you can switch between the states to preview the changes. Events. You define here what type of user interaction will trigger the changes between the two states, the base state and the state. For example, here I'm manipulating the position of the fridge and I'm selecting on hover to trigger the animation between these two states. Then I'm going up to display button, which is our preview mode, to preview the animation and how the interaction works. To orbit around the scene, press and hold Alt or Option and the left mouse button. Here you have other values that you can manipulate. If you want to scale up or down an object, don't forget to lock it so that it doesn't distort its shape. If you click somewhere on your scene to deselect all layers, then you see the frame properties. You can change the background color and you can resize the frame. Here you have some more advanced settings. I'll skip some of them and I'll focus on the basic ones. From the environmental settings, the key thing to remember is that you can change the color temperature of your lighting. Materials. In the materials assets, you can define different materials and also apply the same material to multiple objects. You just need to remember that if that material is applied to multiple objects, as soon as you amend it into changes, that would be applied across all objects that are sharing the same material. And I'm demonstrating that at the moment. I'm manipulating material that is applied to more than one object, and you can see how all those objects are affected. Now let me show you how you can manipulate an object without affecting other objects that are using the same material. So you need to click the layer and then you can affect its color and other properties without changing the master material properties. However, if you see this link button just above your color properties, you need to make sure that you unlink it by pressing it, otherwise you will affect the color of multiple objects. So you need to unlink it first, and then change the color of that specific layer. I will skip some sections in the menu here as they are advanced settings, and we will stick to the basics for today. Then is the shadow menu. You can select if object should cast shadows or not. Now let's go back to my files, delete this one, and let's start building our scene. We covered all the basics that we need, and we will explore some additional settings in the process of building our scene. First, I'll go to the library and select a template that will be the base of our scene. Then I'll start identifying the objects that I want to keep, and I'll delete the rest by simply pressing delete on my keyboard. Here I'll speed up the process. Basically, I'm going through layers and group of layers and seeing what elements I want to keep from that scene, and the rest I'm simply deleting. Since some of the objects are grouped together, I'll start ungrouping them so I can easily organize my layers. Once you ungroup a group, you'll notice that there is an empty layer left. You can delete that. To move entire groups or individual layers, simply drag them up or down in the hierarchy. Now I'll go back to my files and I'll rename this project. After that, I'll head back to the library and I'll start identifying some other objects that I want to copy-paste into my scene. For example, from this scene, I want to grab the icons. To copy-paste, simply use your keyboard shortcuts. Then I'm going back to the project and pasting them. I'm not yet ready to start organizing the layout and changing the colors, so let's see what else we need from the library. I'll go back to the library, and this time I'll use the search filters at the top, and I want to navigate to the game controller and the USB. Once I find them, I will use the same shortcut commands on my keyboard to copy-paste them in my project. Or alternatively, you can right-click on the object and you will get the pop-up contextual menu from where you can select copy and paste. Each time you open an individual object from the library or a template, it's going to be saved to your files. So what I will do after pasting the objects into my scene is going back to my files and deleting those files as I don't need them. And the final 3D object that we need is the game controller, so I'll repeat the process here, copy-pasting it into my canvas and then going back to files and deleting it from there. Afterwards, we can start working on the composition of our scene. Now I'll use the basic settings on the right hand side, position, scale and rotation, to organize my layout. You can actually do the same thing straight into the scene by using the arrows, the red, green and blue ones, which correspond to the relative position values X, Y, Z in the menu panel. From the default viewing angle, X is horizontal, Y is vertical and Z is in or out of the screen. I will speed up a little bit here since I'm just rotating, positioning, moving up and down objects. You can use this navigation menu here to look in orbit around your scene from different perspectives, and you can reset it from the button on the left. Now let's add the text. At the moment, the text on the computer screen is turned into shapes, so we cannot edit it. Basically, it's object, it's not editable text anymore. So I'll hide that. I'll create a new text layer by going up to the top menu there and selecting the T, which is the text tool. And I'll make sure that I click on the laptop screen. As you can see, that plane is now highlighted in red. This means that the text would be on that perspective, on the same plane as the screen. I'm further precising some of the text settings and its color. I'm also positioning the text so it's centered onto the screen. We need to convert now the text layer into shapes. That will allow us to extrude it and to make it look 3D. Just in case, I'll duplicate the text layer and I'll keep an editable copy. I'll make this copy invisible by clicking the eye icon. Now we need to select the visible text layer and head to the left menu and then find the option Convert to Shapes. Then we need to select all shape child layers within that group by holding Shift on our keyboard and selecting the first and the last layer so they're all highlighted in blue. Now it's time to extrude the text. Those settings are also in the menu on the right. I'll go back and further precising my lighting for the text. As you can see, there are different options that I would advise you to explore. Also, we'll do some final color adjustments and we'll play with the shininess property of the material. A quick look around our scene. We can now start actually adjusting the colors of the other objects that we copy pasted from the templates. You basically need to go and select the layer on the left and then select the colors. You'll see that there's some color suggestions, but you can also modify them. If you need to change a color of an element within the group, you need to expand that group and select the specific layer. If you are unsure which element which is, you can use the eye icon to hide and show, so you can identify exactly which element you want to change. You can also select multiple layers within a group by holding Shift and simultaneously affect their colors. Now I'll change the color scheme of the game controller. I'll speed up a little bit here as I'm staying for quite long on this object. And now is the USB. Again, I'm expanding the USB driver group and I'm selecting which element, what color I want it to be. As you can see, we have just 3 elements, so that's going to be quite straightforward process. You can move some of the pop-up panels around. As you can see, I've just moved the material assets panel and I can keep selecting the colors for that specific layer. Okay, let's have a little break here and I'll see you in the second part of the tutorial. Before continuing with our little project, let's have another look around our scene. As you can see, some of the objects that we copy-pasted, they have already added interactions. Don't worry, we'll delete those and we'll add new interactions to those objects. I will start with them and I will just go to the right menu and delete the states and the events because we'll be adding our own. There is one little adjustment that I want to do here on the game controller. This button is a little bit too magenta color. I just want to make it more muted. And now we can start adding some of the interactions. I'll start by adding interaction to the game controller. Now you probably have noticed here that I've added base state and state to the game controller, but actually I won't need them because the event that I'm selecting is look at. When you select this event, you don't need to have state and base state. And look at basically means that the object will rotate according to where the mouse, the cursor, is on the screen. I'll demonstrate you that in a second. Now I'm going back to some of the material settings and just adjusting the shines of the object and also a little bit tweaking the color. I am testing how the shadow options work with the game controller and if I want to keep just the cast shadow option or both. I think I will keep receive off, so I'll select no. Now let's add an interaction to our computer. I will do the same and I'll select look at again. You don't need to add states here. But first, we need to make the text shape layer part of the laptop group. If we don't do it, the laptop will respond to the event, but the text layer will stay still and won't look as part of the screen. Locate where is your shape layer, the one that we converted into shapes and then extruded, and then drag and drop it into the laptop group. Next is the pencil. For this one, we'll need a base state and a state. What I will do is, I will change its rotation. As you can see, I'm using the settings on the right hand side, where it says position, scale, rotation. Once I adjust the rotation, I will select an event. In this case, I want the interaction to happen once you hover over the pencil with your mouse. Now the music note, I will add base state and state, and the event would be on start. On start means that at the moment the scene is loaded, the animation will start. So there is no user interaction here. It's basically, imagine that you're using this for a web page. At the moment the page is loaded, the animation will start. I'm moving to the heart icon. Again, I'm using as an event start. This time I will go to the settings. I'll click on Cube 2 just under Objects. This will expand further the menu, and I'll select the cycle option yes and the repeat option yes. That means that the heart will scale up and down, and that animation will loop, will repeat rather than being just one-off. I've actually forgot to adjust those settings for the music note, so I'm going back and doing the same cycle and repeat. I'm moving to the text bubble. Here I've started adding states, but I've decided to go for just simple look at event, so you can ignore the states. Now is the molecule science icon. I will add just a look at event. For the magnifying glass, however, I will need state and base state, because I will be changing the position. As an event, I will select start. I want to further here adjust the position, and then I will go back to the event, and I want to cycle it and repeat it, just so the animation loops. I will aument the duration just so the animation is slower. So by changing the value at the duration, you can determine how fast to be the animation. Next is the torus. I want to create looping rotation animation. I will need base state set to 0 for the Z value and state set to 360 for the Z value of rotation as well. As an event, I will select start. After some experimenting, the settings that worked are transition set to linear, cycle set to no, and repeat set to yes. This created a looping animation, and the torus keeps seemingly rotating. Lastly, before I move to the next object, I will change its duration just so it's slightly slower. At the moment, the pace of the animation is really fast. Now let's move on to the next text bubble. For this one, I will select as well look at. And again, I'm previewing the scene before I keep going. Next one is the arrow. I've decided to keep it simple and just add look at. Next is the little triangle icon. I will select as an event look at. After that, I'll move to the USB drive. For this one, I will need states as I want to animate the position. So I'm adding base state, and then the actual state I will be changing the position value as I wanted to move from right to left. As an event, I'll select mouse hover, and then we can preview and see the result. I'll take this opportunity to remind you what is the difference between the states. Base state is the current state, and state is where you apply changes to the object, new position or new rotation value, etc. Then you select the event that will trigger that change from one state to another. This results into having animated object that responds to users' interaction. Doing some minor adjustments to the position and previewing again. Last three objects left are the pyramid, the cube and the sphere. I will need base state and state in this case. I want to change the position. I want the pyramid to move up and down and this to cycle. The event will be on start. I want it to cycle and to repeat. Let's see it. Then the cube. For it I will need base state and a state as I want it to rotate, so I am amending the rotation values. As an event, I will select on start, and I want it to cycle and to repeat. Now as you can see, it's cutting off at the floor, so I need to move it up. Actually, I've decided to delete the states and start from scratch, so I've deleted the event and the base state and the state. I've repositioned it and just basically doing the same. I'm also adjusting the duration so the animation is slightly slower, and now we can preview. The final object left is the sphere. So for the sphere again, I will need base state and state. As I want it to go up and down, the event would be on start, I want it to cycle, and I will adjust the duration. And let's preview our little project. I would advise you to explore the rest of the events and play with the other interactions. Lastly, let me quickly show you the export settings that you use the most. As you can see, there are plenty of options. Some are more advanced, but as a start, you will probably stick to public URL. This will allow you to share or embed a link to your project. And the other one that you may need is screen recording. Very intuitive to use. You just select the settings you'd like and then hit recording. When you're ready, Spline will ask you where to save it. And that's us done with our little project. Bye for now.